Sign these papers. My mother-in-law slammed a stack of documents onto my desk, making my coffee cup rattle. Her face wore that familiar look of contempt I'd grown used to over the past 5 years. I'm Amanda Chen, 35 years old, and I own one of the most successful tech consulting firms in our city. Well, at least I did until my in-laws decided they wanted to take it from me. What are these? I asked calmly, though my heart was racing. Transfer of ownership papers. It's time you handed the business over to Richard. He has an MBA, and know how to run it properly. Richard, my brother-in-law. The golden child who'd never worked a day in his life, but somehow believed he deserved everything handed to him. I looked at my husband, Tom, who stood quietly in the corner of my office. His silence spoke volumes. After 12 years of marriage, he still couldn't stand up to his mother. This is my company, I said firmly. I built it from nothing. My mother-in-law laughed, that shrill, condescending laugh that always made my skin crawl. Oh, please. Everyone knows your grandfather handed you the seed money. You just got lucky. Besides your family now, and in this family, the men handle the business decisions. I thought back to my grandfather, who passed away 6 months ago. He was more than just my grandfather. He was my mentor, my inspiration. Yes, he had helped me start my business, but not in the way they thought. Margaret, I addressed my mother-in-law. I won't be signing anything. She straightened her designer blazer, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on my desk. You ungrateful little. Do you know how much we've done for you? We welcomed you into our family despite your background. The least you could do is show some appreciation. By background, she meant being half Chinese and coming from a middle-class family. They never let me forget that I wasn't from their social circle. Mom, Tom finally spoke up, but his voice was weak. Maybe we should discuss this at home. No, Thomas. I've had enough of your wife's attitude. Either she signs the papers or what? I asked, my voice steady. Or we'll make sure everyone knows how you really got your start. About the money your grandfather gave you. About the connections we provided. Where do you think your biggest clients came from? They're all our friends. I had to suppress a smile. If only they knew the truth about those clients. Just then, my office phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Harrison is here to see you. He says it's urgent. Perfect timing. Send him in, I replied. The door opened, and in walked James Harrison, my grandfather's lawyer. He carried a leather briefcase and wore an expression that meant business. Mrs. Chen, I apologize for interrupting, but it's time. My mother-in-law's eyes narrowed. Time for what? The reading of Gerald Chen's final will and testament. The real one. What do you mean, real one? Tom asked, finally showing some interest. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. You see, the will that was read 6 months ago wasn't the complete version. My grandfather had a second will sealed until today, exactly 6 months after his death. Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. Shall we begin? My mother-in-law's face had lost some of its color, but she quickly recovered. This is ridiculous. We're in the middle of an important business discussion. Oh, you'll want to hear this, I said, finally allowing myself a small smile. It's about the business after all. As Mr. Harrison began to read, I watched the color drain completely from my in-laws' faces, because what they were about to learn would change everything, not just about my business, but about every assumption they'd made about me for the past 12 years. My grandfather's final gift to me wasn't just money or property. It was something far more valuable. The truth about who really owned what in this family and how deep the connections really went. And as the lawyer continued reading, I realized this was just the beginning of a much bigger storm that was about to hit the Chen family. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and began reading. I, Gerald Chen, being of sound mind, declare this to be my final will and testament, superseding all previous versions. My mother-in-law interrupted. We've already heard this part 6 months ago. Get to the point. Mr. Harrison gave her a cold look before continuing. However, the following provisions were to remain sealed for 6 months after my death, to allow certain events to unfold naturally. I noticed Tom shifting uncomfortably by the window. He knew something. I could tell by the way he couldn't meet my eyes. To my granddaughter, Amanda Chen, I leave not only my personal fortune as previously stated, but also reveal the following. The Chen Global Holdings, currently believed to be owned by the Chen family, has been under my majority ownership for the past 20 years. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother-in-law's face turned an interesting shade of purple. That's impossible. My husband built that company. Actually, Margaret, I finally spoke up. Your husband nearly bankrupted it in 2003. My grandfather stepped in and bought 67% of the shares, saving it from collapse. He kept it quiet to spare your family's reputation. You're lying, she shrieked. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. I have the original purchase agreements here, along with 20 years of board meeting minutes. Tom finally found his voice. Dad told me something about this last year. He made me promise not to tell anyone. I turned to him, hurt flooding my chest. You knew? All this time? I didn't know everything. Just that there was some deal with your grandfather. Mr. Harrison continued reading. Furthermore, all clients currently associated with Chen Global Holdings were originally contacted and secured through my personal business network, not through the Chen family connections as they have claimed. My mother-in-law sank into a chair, her designer blazer wrinkled and her perfect hair coming undone. The final revelation, Mr. Harrison read, concerns the tech consulting firm owned by my granddaughter, Amanda. While I did provide initial guidance, I never gave her any seed money. She built it entirely on her own merit, securing loans and investors through her own business plan and reputation. I remembered those early days, the countless pitches, the late nights, the rejected applications. My grandfather had insisted I do it on my own, saying true respect comes from what you build yourself. However, Mr. Harrison continued, I did secretly arrange for her firm to be given fair consideration by several major clients. The same clients the Chen family has been taking credit for providing. I wanted to see if she could maintain and grow those relationships on her own merit. The results speak for themselves. Richard burst into the office then, his face red with anger. This is ridiculous. You can't just come in here and claim our family company. I stayed calm. The ownership documents prove everything. Your father has known the truth for 20 years. Dad would never. Your father signed the papers himself. Mr. Harrison interjected, pulling out more documents. In fact, he left additional instructions to be revealed today. He produced another envelope. This letter is from Howard Chen, written 3 months ago. My mother-in-law's head snapped up. Howard wrote a letter. Mr. Harrison began reading. To my family, if you're hearing this, it means Gerald's will has been revealed. Everything he said is true. I made terrible business decisions 20 years ago, and he saved not just our company, but our family's reputation. In return, I promised to keep his majority ownership secret and to watch over his granddaughter when she married my son. Tom moved closer to me, his face pale. Dad never said. The letter continued, I've watched Amanda build her business from nothing. While my family treated her as an outsider, I saw what Gerald saw. A brilliant businesswoman who earned every bit of her success. I was too much of a coward to stand up to my wife and son's prejudices, and for that, I am deeply ashamed. Tears were rolling down my cheeks now. Howard, my father-in-law, had always been quiet, but I'd never known he felt this way. Therefore, Mr. Harrison read, I, Howard Chen, hereby announce my retirement as CEO of Chen Global Holdings, effective immediately upon the reading of this letter. I recommend Amanda Chen as my successor, subject to board approval, which Gerald's majority share will ensure. The room erupted in chaos. This is outrageous, my mother-in-law screamed. Richard knocked over a chair. She can't run both companies. Actually, I said quietly, I can. I've been preparing for this for the past 6 months. My company's management team is ready to take over day-to-day operations while I focus on Chen Global Holdings. Tom stared at me. You knew? All this time you knew? I found out the day after grandfather died. He left me a private letter explaining everything. He wanted me to wait, to let the truth come out naturally, to give everyone a chance to show their true colors. My mother-in-law stood up, straightening her blazer one final time. This isn't over. We'll fight this in court. Mr. Harrison smiled for the first time. You can certainly try, Mrs. Chen. But I've spent the last 20 years documenting everything. Every insult, every attempt to undermine Amanda, every discriminatory comment, all documented and witnessed. Do you really want that becoming public record? She froze. Additionally, he continued, I have here several documents showing questionable financial transactions made by Richard through company accounts over the past 5 years. Richard's face went white. Those were approved expenses. Personal vacation homes and luxury cars charged to the company. I doubt the IRS would agree. Tom finally stepped forward, standing beside me. Enough. Mom, Richard, it's over. Amanda has earned this. You're taking her side? Richard spat. After everything we've done for you. Yes, Tom said firmly. For the first time in our marriage, I'm doing what I should have done years ago. Supporting my wife. My mother-in-law grabbed her designer bag. I won't forget this betrayal. Any of it. She stormed out, Richard following close behind. When they were gone, Tom turned to me. I'm so sorry, Amanda. I knew bits and pieces, but I never. I held up my hand. We'll talk about this later. Right now, I have a company to run. 2 companies, actually. Mr. Harrison packed up his briefcase. Everything is in order, Mrs. Chen. The board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Your grandfather believed you would face this moment with grace and strength. I see he was right. After you left, I sat at my desk, looking at the photo of my grandfather I kept there. His kind eyes seemed to twinkle with pride. Tom lingered by the door. What happens now? I picked up the ownership transfer papers his mother had brought in and dropped them in the shredder. Now we see who in this family is strong enough to accept change. As I watched the papers turn to confetti, I couldn't help but smile. My grandfather had given me one final lesson about business, family, and the price of truth. But this was just the middle of the story. Because tomorrow, I would walk into Chen Global Holdings as its new CEO. And that's when the real challenge would begin. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my suit jacket. Today would change everything. Are you ready? Tom asked from the doorway. I've been ready for 6 months, I replied, picking up my briefcase. The question is, are you ready for what's about to happen to your family? He stepped forward, taking my hand. They're not just my family anymore. We're a family, and I'm done choosing the wrong side. The drive to Chen Global Holdings was tense. Security had already been notified about the change in leadership, and as we pulled up to the executive parking area, I saw Richard's car was already there. He's not going to make this easy, Tom warned. Good, I said, stepping out of the car. I didn't build my own company by taking the easy path. The boardroom was full when we arrived. 12 board members, all men over 60, sat around the massive mahogany table. Richard and my mother-in-law sat at one end, while Howard Chen, my father-in-law, sat quietly at the other. Mr. Harrison was already there, documents spread before him. You can't seriously be considering this, my mother-in-law was saying as we walked in. She'll destroy everything we've built. Everything you built? Howard's quiet voice cut through the room. It was the first time I ever heard him speak up against his wife. Margaret, it's time for truth. We almost lost everything 20 years ago because of my poor decisions. Gerald Chen saved us. And now his granddaughter will save us again. Howard, she gasped. No, Margaret, I've been quiet too long. He stood up, addressing the board. Gentlemen, I fully support Amanda Chen as the new CEO of this company. She has proven herself not just as a successful business owner, but as someone who understands the modern market in ways we failed to grasp. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. She's not even a real Chen. Actually, Mr. Harrison interjected. According to these documents, she has more right to the Chen name than you do, Richard. Would you like me to explain why? Richard's face went pale. He knew what those documents would reveal about his own business dealings. The board chairman cleared his throat. We've reviewed the ownership documents and Howard's recommendation. Given Gerald Chen's majority share and his explicit wishes, combined with Mrs. Chen's proven track record in the tech sector, I believe we should proceed with the vote. My mother-in-law stood up. If you do this, you'll regret it. I know things about this company, about all of you. Mom, Tom interrupted. Stop. Don't make this worse. Worse? She laughed hysterically. Your wife is stealing our company. No, I finally spoke. I'm saving it. Again, would you like to see the company's current financial reports? The ones Richard has been hiding from the board? Richard jumped up. You can't prove anything. Actually, Howard said, pulling out a USB drive, I can. I've been gathering evidence for months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the money you were funneling to your private accounts? The board chairman's face darkened. What money? Over the next hour, the truth came out. Richard had been embezzling funds, hiding losses, and falsifying reports. My mother-in-law had been aware but kept quiet, using the information to blackmail her way into more control. When the vote came, it was unanimous. I was named CEO of Chen Global Holdings, effective immediately. Your first act should be calling the authorities, one board member suggested, glaring at Richard. No, I said firmly. My first act will be offering Richard and his mother a choice. Everyone turned to look at me. Option 1. You both resign quietly, sign non-disclosure agreements, and I don't pursue criminal charges for the embezzlement. You'll retain your personal shares but have no operational control. And option 2, Richard asked, his voice shaking. I turn everything over to the FBI. Every transaction, every hidden account, every piece of evidence Howard and my grandfather collected, your choice. My mother-in-law's facade finally cracked. You would show mercy. After everything? I'm not doing it for you, I replied. I'm doing it for this company, its employees, and its legacy. A public scandal helps no one. They took option 1, of course. Richard and my mother-in-law left the building that day, never to return. The press release simply stated they had chosen to pursue other opportunities. Over the next year, I reorganized both companies, merging my tech consulting firm's innovation with Chen Global's resources. Profits doubled. Employee satisfaction soared. The board's initial skepticism turned to wholehearted support. Tom found his own path too, starting a charitable foundation that helped immigrant entrepreneurs, his way of making amends for his family's past behavior. Howard became one of my closest advisors, his quiet wisdom helping me navigate the challenges of running a major corporation. He and Tom rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of truth rather than fear. My mother-in-law moved to Florida, where she apparently tells anyone who will listen that she retired early to enjoy the sunshine. Richard took a job with a small firm in another state, humbled by his fall from grace. As for me, I kept my grandfather's photo on my desk, both at the office and at home. His final gift wasn't just the company, it was the chance to prove that success doesn't come from family names or connections, but from hard work, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Last week, as I sat in my grandfather's old office, my office now, Tom brought our daughter by after school. She's 7, and already shows the same determination I had at her age. Mommy, she asked, looking around the big office, will I run the company someday? I smiled, thinking of my grandfather's words. True respect comes from what you build yourself. That's up to you, sweetheart, I told her. You can run this company, start your own, or do anything else you dream of. The most important thing is to do it your way, with integrity and strength. She nodded solemnly, then brightened. Like you did. Yes, I said, hugging her close. Exactly like that. After they left, I looked out over the city skyline, thinking about how much had changed in just 1 year. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in boardrooms or with lawyers, but within families where love and duty clash with truth and justice. But in the end, the truth always comes out. And when it does, you find out who really deserves to be called family. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories. See you in the next video. I can't believe you're actually going through with this, Olivia said, her voice dripping with disdain as she leaned against my office doorframe. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been finalizing the business plan I'd spent months perfecting. My sister stood there in her designer suit, every inch of her radiating the confidence that came from never having to fight for anything in her life. Why wouldn't I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been working on this concept for over a year. The market research shows there's a huge demand for sustainable fashion rental services, especially in. Please, she cut me off with a dismissive wave. You really think you can pull this off? You've never even run a business before. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 28, I was about to launch my dream company, a revolutionary platform that would transform how people thought about fashion consumption. The idea had come to me during my years working in retail management, watching countless customers struggle with the balance between wanting to stay trendy and being environmentally conscious. My solution was simple but innovative, a subscription-based service that would allow people to rent high-end sustainable fashion pieces, with a portion of the profits going to environmental causes. I'd spent countless nights researching, planning, and building connections with sustainable fashion brands. Every detail had been carefully considered, from the eco-friendly packaging to the blockchain-based tracking system that would ensure transparency in our supply chain. This wasn't just a business idea, it was my passion, my way of making a real difference in an industry desperately needing change. But Olivia had always had a way of making my dreams seem small, insignificant. At 32, she was the successful one in our family, working as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm. She'd always done everything first, better, smoother. And she never let me forget it. "I've done my homework," I replied, turning back to my laptop. "The business plan is solid, the financial projections are conservative but promising, and I've already got interest from several investors." She walked into my office, picking up one of the sample sustainable fabric swatches from my desk. "Oh, really? And how much startup capital do you need?" "250,000, I said, watching as her perfectly manicured fingers toyed with the fabric. "I'm meeting with Mom and Dad this weekend to discuss their investment." That's when I saw it, the flash in her eyes, the slight curl of her lip. I should have recognized it for what it was, the look of a predator spotting prey. "Well, good luck with that," she said, dropping the fabric back on my desk. "I'm sure it'll be interesting." I didn't think much of her visit at the time. That was my first mistake. The family dinner that weekend started like any other, with Mom fussing over the table settings and Dad talking about his golf game. I'd spent hours preparing my presentation, making sure every detail was perfect. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my laptop. "Before we start dinner," I began, "I wanted to talk to you both about an investment opportunity." But before I could even open my presentation, Olivia cleared her throat. "Actually," she said, setting down her wine glass with a deliberate click, "I have something I'd like to discuss too." My stomach tightened as she pulled out her own laptop. "I've been working on an exciting new venture," she announced, her voice carrying that confident tone she perfected over years of corporate presentations. "A revolutionary platform in the sustainable fashion space." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as I watched her pull up a sleek presentation, complete with professional graphics and animations. My presentation suddenly felt amateur in comparison. As she spoke, describing my idea with practiced ease, adding just enough tweaks to make it seem like her own, I felt the blood drain from my face. "The market research shows huge potential," she was saying, using the exact phrases I'd shared with her in my office. "And with my experience in marketing and business development, we could dominate this space within 2 years." Mom and Dad were enthralled, nodding along as she wove her spell. They'd always been impressed by her corporate success, her polished demeanor. When she finished, Dad was already reaching for his checkbook. "This is impressive, Olivia," he said, beaming with pride. "Very impressive. How much are you looking for?" "500,000, she replied smoothly, "to really do it right." "Now that's thinking big," Mom added, shooting me a quick glance. "Sarah, didn't you want to discuss something too?" I sat there, frozen, as the magnitude of what had just happened sank in. My sister hadn't just stolen my idea. She'd taken my dream and sold it as her own, knowing she had the credentials and connections to make it more appealing to our parents. "No," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. It's nothing." Later that night, as I was leaving, Olivia caught up with me in the driveway. "Hey, no hard feelings, right?" she said, her smile sharp in the darkness. "Business is business. And let's be honest, I can execute this so much better than you ever could. Good luck competing, though." Her laugh echoed in my ears as I drove home, tears blurring my vision. But among the hurt and betrayal, something else was crystallizing: determination. If Olivia thought she could just steal my dream and get away with it, she was about to learn a very important lesson. I spent that night going through everything. All my research, my contacts, my plans. Olivia might have taken my basic idea, but she didn't have the depth of knowledge I'd accumulated over the past year. She didn't have the relationships I'd built with sustainable fashion brands, or the understanding of the complex supply chain issues involved. Most importantly, she didn't have my backup plan. You see, while developing my business concept, I'd discovered something crucial. The sustainable fashion industry had a significant authentication problem. Many brands claiming to be eco-friendly were actually greenwashing their products, using clever marketing to hide unsustainable practices. My original business plan had included a proprietary authentication system that would use blockchain technology to track and verify the sustainability claims of our partner brands. It was complex, technical, And I hadn't shared those details with Olivia during her office visit. She had the shell of my idea, but not its revolutionary core. The next morning, I called Marcus, my best friend from college who now worked in tech development. "Remember that authentication system we discussed?" I asked. "How quickly can we make it operational?" "The prototype's already built," he replied. "We could have a working version in 3 months, maybe less." "Why?" I took a deep breath. "Because we're going to beat my sister at her own game." Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Olivia threw our parents' money at launching her version of my business. She hired a flashy PR firm, rented expensive office space, and started making grand promises about revolutionizing sustainable fashion. Her company, which she named EcoChick, generated quite a buzz in the local business scene. Meanwhile, I worked quietly but steadily. I sold my car, emptied my savings, and took out a small business loan. It wasn't $500,000, but it was enough to start. Marcus and his team worked around the clock on the authentication system, while I focused on building real relationships with truly sustainable brands who understood the value of what we were creating. I named my company TrueThread, simple, honest, and direct. Everything Olivia wasn't. 3 months later, just as EcoChick was preparing for its grand launch, I made my move. I didn't do it with flashy PR or expensive parties. Instead, I published a detailed white paper revealing the extent of greenwashing in the fashion industry, along with our blockchain-based solution for authenticating truly sustainable products. The paper went viral in sustainability circles. Major fashion blogs picked it up, and suddenly TrueThread was being hailed as a potential game-changer in sustainable fashion. More importantly, several high-profile sustainable brands reached out, excited about the possibility of proving their eco-friendly credentials. Olivia's launch party was scheduled for the following week. I didn't attend, but I heard all about it from Mom, who called to tell me how impressive everything looked. The offices were beautiful, the champagne was flowing, and Olivia gave a passionate speech about revolutionizing sustainable fashion. What Olivia didn't know was that 3 of her biggest potential brand partners had already signed exclusive agreements with TrueThread. They'd been impressed by our authentication system and our genuine commitment to sustainability. More importantly, they'd been concerned about the lack of technical depth in EcoChick's approach. The first cracks in Olivia's facade appeared about 2 months after her launch. Without proper authentication measures, EcoChick had accidentally partnered with several brands that were later exposed for greenwashing. The scandal was minor, but it was enough to make other potential partners nervous. Meanwhile, TrueThread was growing steadily. Our authentication system was proving its worth, and our commitment to transparency was attracting both customers and partners. We weren't growing as fast as EcoChick, but we were building something sustainable in every sense of the word. I was in my office late one evening, reviewing partnership agreements, when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Olivia's been drinking. She's very upset." "What did you do?" I didn't respond. I knew what was coming. The next morning, Olivia showed up at my office. Gone was the designer suit and the perfect makeup. She looked tired, desperate. "We need to talk," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same spot where, months ago, she had dismissed my dreams with a wave of her hand. "I'm listening," I said quietly, watching as my sister struggled to find the words that would salvage her failing business. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in watching your enemies fall, but in knowing you succeeded despite them. Olivia sat across from me, fidgeting with her watch, a nervous habit I hadn't seen since we were kids. The morning light streaming through my office window highlighted the dark circles under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands. This wasn't the polished sister who had smugly stolen my dreams. This was someone on the edge of desperation. "I need your help," she finally said, the words seeming to physically pain her. "EcoChick is in trouble." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch between us. Part of me wanted to savor this moment, to let her feel the full weight of her actions. But another part, the part that remembered building sandcastles with her at the beach and sharing secrets under blanket forts, ached at seeing her so broken. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically vulnerable that it caught me off guard. "Everything's falling apart," she admitted. The greenwashing scandal was just the beginning. We've lost 3 more brand partnerships this week. Our authentication process is a mess. We can't verify half the claims our partners make about their sustainability practices. And now, she paused, swallowing hard. Now there's a class action lawsuit brewing. Some customers are claiming we misled them about the environmental impact of our products. I felt my stomach tighten. A lawsuit could not only destroy EcoChic, but could damage the entire sustainable fashion movement we were trying to build. This was bigger than just Olivia's failure. It could hurt the very cause I dedicated myself to. What about Mom and Dad's investment? I asked, already dreading the answer. Olivia's eyes welled up. Gone. All of it. $500,000. I've tried everything, Sarah. Hired consultants, brought in experts, but nothing works. We need your authentication system. We need TrueThread's credibility. The irony wasn't lost on me. The sister who had dismissed my capabilities, who had stolen my idea and claimed she could execute it better, was now asking for the very expertise she'd once mocked. And what exactly are you proposing? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions inside me. A merger, she said quickly, as if getting the words out faster would make them more palatable. EcoChic and TrueThread. Together we'd have the market presence and the technical backbone. You have the authentication system and the trust of the sustainable brands. We have the marketing reach and the customer base. It makes sense. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. The same view I'd stared at countless nights while building TrueThread from scratch, without family support or connections. Just pure determination and belief in my vision. It makes sense, I repeated softly, turning back to face her. Just like it made sense for you to steal my idea and convince our parents to invest in you instead of me. Just like it made sense to laugh in my face and tell me I couldn't compete. Olivia flinched. I was wrong, she whispered. I was arrogant and cruel, and I was wrong about everything. You've built something amazing here, something real. I just took the surface idea and threw money at it, but you understood the depth of what was needed. You always did. Her admission hung in the air between us, heavy with years of rivalry and resentment. I sat back down, pulling up TrueThread's latest financial reports on my computer. Do you know what these numbers mean, Olivia? I asked, turning the screen toward her. They show that TrueThread is now valued at over $5 million. We're profitable, growing, and most importantly, we're making a real difference in the industry. We've helped expose 3 major greenwashing operations and provided certification for dozens of genuinely sustainable brands. I let that sink in before continuing. And do you know how we got here? By understanding that sustainability isn't just a marketing buzzword. It's a commitment that requires knowledge, transparency, and integrity. Olivia nodded, wiping away a tear. I know that now, but it's not just about the money anymore, Sarah. If EcoChic goes down like this, it could damage consumer trust in sustainable fashion for years. Everything you've worked for, everything you believe in, it could all be tainted by association. She was right, and that was the most frustrating part. The sustainable fashion movement was still fragile, still fighting against decades of fast fashion dominance. A high-profile failure and lawsuit could set us back years. I pulled up another document on my computer, one I'd prepared months ago, almost as if I'd known this day would come. I'm not interested in a merger, I said firmly, watching her face fall. But I am willing to discuss an acquisition. Her head snapped up. An acquisition? TrueThread would absorb EcoChic's assets and customer base. We'd handle the transition of your existing partnerships to our authentication system. Most importantly, we'd implement proper sustainability verification for all products, which should help mitigate the lawsuit risks. I slid a paper across the desk to her. These are my terms. They're non-negotiable. Olivia picked up the document with trembling hands. As she read, her eyes widened. This would mean. You work for me, I finished. Not as an executive, but as a regular employee in our marketing department. You'd start at entry level and earn any promotions based on merit, not family connections. And you'd have to publicly acknowledge that TrueThread's authentication system was your sister's innovation that you initially borrowed. She stared at the paper for a long moment. And Mom and Dad's investment? I'll ensure they get partial recovery of their investment through shares in TrueThread. Not all of it. They made their choice when they backed you without even hearing my pitch. But enough to show that family still means something to me. Olivia looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of my rival. Why would you do this? After everything I did to you? I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up working on TrueThread, all the obstacles I'd overcome, all the strength I found in myself when everyone else had doubted me. Because success isn't about destroying your competition, I said softly. It's about staying true to your vision and your values, and my vision was always about making the fashion industry more sustainable, more transparent. This acquisition serves that goal. I paused, letting a small smile cross my face. Besides, watching you have to learn things the right way, from the ground up, might be satisfaction enough. A week later, we announced the acquisition. The press praised it as a smart consolidation in the sustainable fashion space, but those who knew the whole story saw it for what it was, a testament to the power of doing things the right way, even when others take shortcuts. Olivia started her new role the following Monday. I watched from my office as she was shown to her small cubicle, accepting the standard employee laptop and orientation packet with a humility I'd never seen in her before. It was strange seeing her without the designer suits and perfect makeup, dressed in business casual like any other employee. That evening, as I was leaving the office, I found a note on my desk written in Olivia's familiar handwriting. I never said it properly before, but I'm sorry, not just for stealing your idea, but for every time I made you feel less than. You've built something extraordinary here, and I hope one day I can earn the right to be proud to be your sister again. Thank you for giving me a chance to learn from you. Oh. I tucked the note into my desk drawer and headed home, feeling lighter than I had in months. The next morning, I had Marcus start training Olivia on our authentication system. If she was going to work her way up in my company, she was going to learn everything from the ground up, starting with the very thing she should have valued from the beginning. Over the next few months, I watched as Olivia threw herself into learning every aspect of the business. She stayed late, asked questions, and most surprisingly, showed genuine interest in understanding the technical side of our authentication system. The employees who didn't know our history were impressed by her work ethic. Those who did watched with a mix of amusement and respect as she earned her place, one small victory at a time. Mom and Dad took longer to come around. The loss of their investment had strained family relationships, and it took several uncomfortable Sunday dinners before we could all sit at the same table without tension. But gradually, as they saw how TrueThread was growing and how Olivia was changing, things began to heal. 1 year after the acquisition, I called Olivia into my office. She entered with the quiet confidence she developed, so different from her old arrogance. I've been reviewing your performance reports, I said, gesturing for her to sit. Your supervisors speak highly of your work, particularly your recent campaign for our Authentication Awareness Initiative. She nodded, waiting for me to continue. There's a senior marketing position opening up, I said, watching her carefully. You'd be welcome to apply, just like any other employee. A smile spread across her face, not the smug grin of old, but something genuine and warm. Thank you, but I think I'll wait. I'm still learning so much in my current role, and honestly, I want to earn it, really earn it this time. I felt a surge of pride, not just in my company's success, but in watching my sister become someone who finally understood the value of doing things the right way. Well, I said, standing up and gathering my things. In that case, want to grab coffee? I've been working on some new ideas for expanding our authentication system, and I'd love your marketing perspective. As we walked to the coffee shop, discussing business ideas and sharing genuine laughs, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about growing beyond what hurt you, and maybe even helping others grow too. TrueThread continued to lead the sustainable fashion revolution, but more importantly, it stood as proof that success built on integrity lasts longer than any shortcut. And every time I saw Olivia working late at her desk, poring over sustainability reports or crafting honest marketing campaigns, I knew that some lessons, though hard-learned, were worth every difficult moment along the way.